Okay, good morning, everybody. I've just been informed that we are live. I'm Frankie Mitchell. I'm with Democratic Services and I'm clerking this meeting. And welcome to this licensing hearing. It's an application for a variation of the premises licence for Revolution at 77 West Street, Brighton, Bravo November 1 to Romeo Alpha. Before we continue, could I just ask the councillors on the panel, please, to elect a chair amongst themselves?
Good morning, Frankie. I would vote for Julie to chair this meeting.
I second.
Councillor Cattell, you are the chair.
Thank you very much. Just a bit of procedural business. Declaration of substitutes. Definitely know that none of us are, so because we are on the agenda. Any interests or declaration of interests from the panel members? No. There are no non-public items on the agenda today, so we won't have to exclude the press and public for any item today. We're being webcast, so it's all in open session. As Frankie said, this is an application for a variation of licence at Revolution, 77 West Street, Brighton. Before we start, can I ask everyone to introduce themselves, and hopefully everybody's happy to use first names. I'll go across the screen as I see it, as I can see it. So first of all, I'm Councillor Julie Cattell. I represent Westbourne and Poets Corner Ward, and I'm Deputy Chair of the Licensing Committee. Sarah.
Good morning, I'm Sarah Cornell and I'm the Licensing Officer for the Council presenting this application.
Thank you. Frankie? Oh, you've already introduced yourself, but have another go.
Thank you very much. Yes, Frankie Mitchell, Democratic Services, and as I said, I'm clerking this meeting this morning.
Thank you. And now I've got Rebecca.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Rebecca Lowe. I'm a solicitor from Kites, and I'm representing the applicant this morning.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
And now I've got Nick.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nick Lewis. I'm the General Manager in DPS from Revolution in Brighton.
Thank you. Michael.
Good morning, I'm the Head of Safety and Licensing at Rivel Collective PLC, so on behalf of the applicant.
Fantastic. Claire?
Hello, I'm Claire Abdelkader. I'm a Police Licensing Officer to present the police's case today.
Thank you. Corinne?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Corinne Hardcastle. I'm the Licensing Officer who submitted a representation to the application today.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, good morning. Rebecca Siddell, Legal Advisor to the panel. And I've got two colleagues sitting in on this one today, my senior colleague Carol Haynes and my colleague Helen Wilson, if that's all right with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Steve?
Mr. Button. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time. Councillor Steve Davis. I represent Preston Park and I'm a member of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you. Sarah?
Good morning, Sarah Booker-Lewis, local democracy reporter for Brighton and Hove, representing the majority of news media in the city.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Sam.
I'm Sam Parrott. I'm the Councillor for Westbourne and Poets Corner and I'm a member of the Licensing Committee.
Thank you. Okay, now could you please make sure that your microphone is on when you're speaking, and obviously and in your camera if you're happy with that, but could you please turn off your mic when you're not speaking so that we don't get any strange sounds filtering into the panel. Now I'm going to start by asking Sarah if she would open the proceedings with the to tell us what this is all about today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. So as you have heard, this is an application for a variation to the premises licence for Revolution, West Street, Brighton, to extend the terminal hour for opening, alcohol hours and regulated entertainment on a Friday and Saturday and the day before any bank holiday by 1 hour, and also to update conditions. So you'll see the hours explained in the committee report agenda. So it's to add, I think it's from 2 until 3. I will leave it up to the panel. Sorry, I will leave it up to the applicant to explain the proposed application and concept for the premises in more detail. 3 representations were received. They were received from Sussex Police, the Licensing Authority and the Environmental Protection Team. The Environmental Protection Team and applicant have recently reached an agreement, so this representation has since been withdrawn, and you can see this agreement in an addendum that has been shared with all parties. Representations received had concerns relating to the prevention of crime and disorder, prevention of public nuisance and cumulative impact, and these can be found from page 47 of today's agenda. Both the applicant and police have submitted additional information, and these have also been shared with the panel and added as an addendum to the agenda. The premises is situated in our cumulative impact zone. The special policy states that variation applications which are likely to add to the existing cumulative impact will be refused following relevant representations. This presumption of refusal can be rebutted by the applicant if they can show that their application will have no negative cumulative impact on licensing objectives. This special policy is not absolute. Upon receipt of a relevant representation, the licensing authority will always consider the circumstances of each case and whether there are exceptional circumstances to justify departing from its special policy. And the panel will also be aware of the matrix approach to licensing decisions found within our policy and page 13 of the agenda. This includes a table with provisions for a terminal hour for licensed activities for different classes of licensed premises in a particular area, recognising the diverse operations and different risks presented by those premises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'll now hand over to Claire to put forward the case for the police, unless anybody has any questions. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions of Sarah? Nope. Okay, I'll now hand over to Claire. Thank you. Hi, Claire.
Hi, Chair. Thank you very much. So, as Sarah has mentioned, this is an application for a variation of a premises licence within the cumulative impact area as defined by the Brighton and Hove City Council Statement of Licensing Policy. The application seeks to extend the hours for alcohol until 3:30 on a Friday, Saturday and the day before any bank holiday, with late night refreshment and regulated entertainment ceasing at 4, with a closing time also of 4. New or variation applications asking for these licensable activities and timings are typically a no under the decision-making matrix in this area. And policy also states that applications of this nature, which are highly likely to add the cumulative impact, should be refused following relevant representations. The applicant did pre-consult with Sussex Police and, as mentioned in their submissions, utilised a number of temporary event notices early this year. It is important to note, however, that these tents were in place at a time when one of the largest premises in town and on West Street, that is, Prism, was closed due to King's West building being deemed unsafe. Police did take this factor into consideration when agreeing the tents, and it was made clear at the time that this was a temporary measure while Prism was closed to facilitate customers with the loss of a 2,000+ venue on one of the main streets. The BHCC special policy states at paragraph 3.1.6 that it will only be overridden in exceptional circumstances. We do not believe the applicant has offered any significant reasons why their application would be an exception to policy or why the statement of licensing policy matrix should be departed from, either in their original paperwork or their additional submission. While Sussex Police acknowledge that the licence application is modest in terms of what was originally discussed with police, any extension of licensable activity and hours encourages and enables, by way of increased capacity, more persons who may be under the influence of alcohol or drugs to remain in an area which is already evidenced as highly problematic. As the main focus street of the nighttime economy, West Street suffers from high levels of crime and disorder and is a focal point for the police's Operation Marble patrols. If additional hours are granted in this area, it's highly likely to increase the risk of crime and disorder, antisocial behaviour and public nuisance in an area that already has a high number of existing licensed premises. We welcome the research around crime statistics that the applicant has provided in their submission, but this does not show detailed information around the timings of these incidents and crimes. So I've used our own recording system, for instance, in and around licensed premises and produced crime stats around this, which have more around the timings. I looked at the 12 months between the 6th of October 2024 and the 5th of October 2025, within a 0.25 mile radius, approximately 400 metres from the premises postcode, so Bravo November 1 to Romeo Alpha. For reference, this area stretches roughly from North Road off Queen's Road down to the shoreline and from Clarence Square to the west to just before the Old Steine to the east. So during this time, there were 9,194 recorded incidents, and these would have required some form of police interaction, attendance or time. Of these 9,194 incidents, a little under half, so 4,479, were recorded crimes. And the top three crime types throughout the week were theft, with around 41% of the crimes, violence against the person, 26% of the crimes, and public order, with 11% of the crimes. And as I mentioned, it's worth noting there was a peak in crime between midnight and 4 a.m. in the early hours of Saturday, extending to 2300 to 4 a.m. from the Saturday into Sunday. In fact, when I looked further, 12% of the week's total crime happens in the 8 hours of midnight to 4 on a Saturday and midnight to 4 on a Sunday. So 8 hours out of a total of 168, we see 12% of the total crime take place. So at the weekends, so this includes Friday night all the way up to the early hours of Monday, violence against the person replaces theft as the top crime type, rising from 26% to 44%. So this provides real evidence of the risk of potential violent crime and disorder, particularly against persons in this area. Again, a peak was seen between midnight and 4 o'clock on both days, with the highest risk time between 1 and 2 on a Sunday morning. Recent data research under Opmarble has shown there's been an increase in violent crime and incidents recorded and related to alcohol or drugs in the city centre year on year. We've seen it go from 2,776 in 2002 to 3,289 in 2003 and 3,360 in 2004. I cannot provide timings around these, but it's simply to demonstrate that violent crime and incidents have increased in the city year on year. West Street, as we know, forms one of the main licensed premises heavy streets in the centre of town. It's known to both locals and visitors to be a popular area, and so sees high foot traffic and road traffic throughout the year. Police therefore do have concerns about extending hours at a venue in a place already saturated with licensed premises, pushing the close time to the same time as other venues in the vicinity, increasing the potential amount of people leaving venues, thus increasing the risk of potential crime and disorder. We note the submission from the applicant around timings of other venues within West Street and the vicinity, and obviously we made our own submissions too. While these show the cessation times on the premises licence for alcohol closing and dispersal of other venues, we'd like to note some nuance in this. The advertised hours for a number of venues on West Street and Duke Street differ from the licence hours, and this could impact dispersal at Revolution, should the longer hours be granted. So as per their own websites, Prism currently shows that on Friday and Saturday night they close at 4 o'clock, which is the same time that Revolution would like to close. Molly Malone's, which is a few doors up, shows on their own website that Friday and Saturday night they close at 4, which is the same time that Revolution want to close. And number 32, which is on Duke Street just off West Street, on Saturday they close at 4 o'clock, which is the same time that Revolution want to close. So West Street and the surround already faces high levels of crime and disorder, as evidenced in the crime statistics, and this extends far into the early hours of the morning, 4 o'clock on a Saturday and Sunday, and we only see a significant drop-off to the reported numbers of crimes at 6 a.m. A reference was made in the special report around taxi ranks and late-night food premises, and there is a real risk that if several key premises on West Street are now closing at 4, that an increase in the number of people will put further pressure on these. Additional people all hitting late-night food premises and taxi ranks at the same time could potentially increase queuing times, flashpoints, and the risk for negative interactions and the potential to become a victim of crime. It's again cumulative impact that must be taken into consideration, not just for customers of Revolutions. This application therefore has the potential risk of undermining the prevention of crime and disorder and public nuisance licensing objectives. Furthermore, Sussex Police contend that the carrying on of any additional licensable activity, particularly with hours till 3:34, has a potential to add to the existing negative cumulative impact in an area already saturated with licensed premises. Under the Brighton and Hove City Council special policy, the expectation is that operators will pay special attention when drawing up their operating schedules, and the applicant should show that they will not add any cumulative impact to an already problematic area. If this is not the case, then the application should be refused following relevant representations. While it's positive that the applicant has provided a new schedule of updated conditions, it's important to remember that conditions can never fully mitigate the risks associated with opening into the early hours of the morning. They go some way to reduce incidents occurring within the premises itself and in the immediate vicinity, but there's no conditions that can address the risks around further dispersal. Customers away from the control of the premises, with the risk of them becoming a victim of crime or then partaking in criminal activity increasing. All this risk in turn falls to the emergency services to deal with, or in relation to public nuisance, the local authority environmental officers to pick up. It's not felt that anything provided can fully address local concerns or show that the application will have no negative cumulative impact. Therefore, Sussex Police believe this application does not provide enough evidence to rebut the presumption of refusal in the cumulative impact area. We welcome proposals from the applicant as to how they will manage and mitigate any risk to prevent the undermining of crime and disorder and public nuisance. And we also welcome clarification around how they will not add to the new negative cumulative impact. This may include further amendments to timings, licensable activity, additional consideration for conditions that have not already been offered, or evidencing of exceptional circumstances. It could be, however, that upon hearing the applicant's submissions, the committee feel the risk cannot be lessened, that it cannot be proved that there will be no negative cumulative impact, and that there are no exceptional circumstances to justify departing from the special policy. It's for these reasons that Sussex Police would ask you, the committee, to seriously consider refusing this application in light of the local issues, crime distorted statistics, cumulative impact and police concerns. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions of Claire, but before we do, I'd like to ask something. First of all, Claire, could you repeat that about the number of incidents between 24 and 25?
Yes, sorry, did I say 2004? I meant 2024.
Well, you did first of all, but I'm thinking about the first ones you said over 9,000 incidents between, was it October 24 and October 25?
Yeah, so
9,
there were 9,194 incidents during the 6th of October 24 and the 5th of October 25, within that 0.25 mile radius.
I thought you said that. That's why I was asking. And secondly, you mentioned something about taxi ranks. Now, I don't know if I dreamt this, but I read somewhere that taxi rank in East Street is going to be closed down for 2 years. Now, Steve's nodding. Is that your understanding, Steve, as well?
I think that was the question I was going to ask, Julian. I thought it was West Street itself. I don't know if Claire's aware of it, and I suppose we're probably going for the same question, Julie, in terms of dispersal. I imagine that if a large taxi rank is going to be closed for a couple of years, it's going to really impact the dispersal. Sorry to jump in on that, Julie, but Claire.
No, that's fine. I thought it was. I don't. Is there a taxi rank in West Street? I thought there's definitely one in East Street.
So there is a taxi rank at the bottom of West Street, outside Prism.
Oh, okay, yeah, fair enough.
And there is one round the corner on Pigs Road.
Right, okay, because
and then up at Old Steam. I think it's difficult because obviously there's a lot of work being done in the town around Valley Gardens, and different roads will be closed. So it's hard to know. I don't know if someone from the council has further information about taxi ranks.
We can probably.
I'm just emailing our taxi team just to find out if they know anything further, and I'll keep you informed.
Yeah, I'm sure I read it in the Argus or whatever the other day. Thanks. So, Steve, have you got any other questions of Claire? Sam?
I just wanted to clarify, you said that the highest incidents were between 1 and 2 a.m.
Yes.
On a
So
Saturday and Sunday morning.
Yes. So we see an increase in crime between midnight and 4, but the highest incidents of crime are between 1 and 2, and then they sort of gradually tail off, but we don't see a significant drop off until 6, really.
Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Lowe.
Thank you. Sorry, it's more just an admin question than anything. Sarah mentioned that you had served additional evidence, Claire, and I think you referred to some timings that you'd served. I'm afraid we haven't seen those directly. I've just had a quick look on the agenda papers. Is it just that list of closing times in terms of documentary evidence? That's fine. Lovely. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for Claire? No. Okay, in that now I will go over to Corinne for her submission on behalf of the Licensing Authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody, again. My representation on behalf of the Licensing Authority can be found on pages 51 and 52 of today's agenda. The representation was made as the licensing team has concerns that the application could have a negative impact on the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. I also refer to the special policy on cumulative impact contained within the Council's Statement of Licensing Policy. Sarah has already outlined the application, the matrix approach and references to variation applications in the cumulative impact zone, so I'll not repeat that again, but that is the basis of my representation. I acknowledge that the applicant has offered updated conditions in the operating schedule of their application, and whilst I appreciate this approach, due to the hours being applied for and where the premises are situated, I feel it is necessary to bring this application before the panel to make the final decision as to whether they feel it is an exception to our policy. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. I was expecting slightly longer, but that was short.
Keeping it brief today.
Thank you. Yes, especially after our 4-hour marathon yesterday. Any questions from my colleagues, either Steve or Sam?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the applicant or from Claire?
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the applicant submissions. Who's going to do that? Is that going to be you, Rebecca?
It will, Chair, yes, if that's all right.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So morning, councillors, morning, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning. Having heard that you were 4 hours yesterday, I'll try and be as brief as I possibly can, but you'll appreciate there is a reasonable amount to get through here. As you've heard, I'm here today with Nick, who is the DPS and the General Manager at the premises, and then Mike from Inventive Revolution, Revel Group's head office. They'll be totally happy to assist with any questions that you have, but I will just lead with the bulk of the submissions now. Hopefully you've had the chance, councillors, to read the short evidence pack that we submitted on the 2nd. I can see nodding, that's wonderful. Thank you very much for that. And in that case, I will avoid repeating the detail of the applicant's background and the premises background. But suffice to say, the Revel Collective is a long-established, well-respected business in the hospitality industry, and Revolution Brighton is a well-established premises with an excellent trading record. As you know, councillors, as you'll have read, as Sarah outlined to you, this application we would submit a relatively modest application seeking a relatively modest extension of hours, which would amount to an additional 2 hours of trade in a usual week or 3 in a weekend that includes a bank holiday. So if you decide to grant, councillors, you'd be approving an additional hour for licensable activities and an additional hour for opening on a Friday and Saturday and on the days prior to any bank holiday. So this would allow for the sale of alcohol until 3:30 and the provision of regulated entertainment, late night refreshment and opening until 4 o'clock. You'll also, as you've heard, councillors, be approving an updated and more comprehensive operating schedule, and that was offered by my client in cognizance and recognition of the fact that the premises obviously falls within your designated cumulative impact zone. We're here today because the premises falls within that zone, and as you've heard, because this application has attracted 3 objections from the responsible authorities, 2 of which remain and is therefore obviously subject to the cumulative impact policy. Before I go into detail in terms of what the representations say, what we would like to say in response, I'll just touch briefly on what your cumulative impact policy says. I've no doubt that you know it inside out, but no doubt you'll be aware the policy creates a rebuttable presumption against the grant of variations such as this, but only those which are likely to add to the existing cumulative impact as per paragraph 3.1.6 of your policy. We would submit that this application is not likely to add to existing impact for the reasons that I'll explore. And even if on the face of it, the additional hour is thought to have the propensity perhaps to add to cumulative impact, the special policy as per paragraph 3.1.9 is not absolute. The presumption is rebuttable if we can demonstrate to you that this application is exceptional or that there are exceptional circumstances surrounding it and the grant of it would not result in any negative impact. And I'm confident that we're able to do so for a number of reasons. Now, firstly, and just briefly, I would touch just on the pattern of representations itself, which we would say demonstrates a relatively exceptional response to an application in a cumulative impact zone, and which we would submit as indicative of an exceptionally well-run premises and an exceptional application. I'll address, if I may, the environmental health representation shortly, which of course touches on public nuisance. But in terms of crime and disorder, what we would say and what we would submit is that the representations of both the police and indeed of the licensing authority are notable in terms of their generality. In their written representation, the police state that the application requires scrutiny and discussion. They do state that they're unconvinced that we can provide the evidence to rebut the presumption against grant, but they say that as a result of that, they feel that the application needs to be explored by you. Now, of course, they're right to say that it's for us to demonstrate exceptional circumstances, but what they do not say here at any point, either in the written representation or indeed in Claire's submissions this morning, that this is a problematic premises. The statistics that Claire has provided to you this morning are general. They are about the area in which Revolution is located. There are some general comments about what negative cumulative impact could be from an additional hour, which I will address shortly. But again, nothing specific has been said to you either in written representation or indeed by either Claire or Corinne this morning about this premises beyond the general policy position. Again, as I say, the written representation of the licensing authority simply details the background to and effect of the policy. It states that they make this representation for the purpose of upholding the policy, and they invite us to explain the circumstances to you. So, as I say, neither representation raises any specific concerns in terms of the premises itself, how it operates, what it's doing now, how it's run. And I would reiterate that that in itself, or I would submit, is exceptional. The policy covers this area specifically because it is a challenging area, as you've heard from the statistics that Claire's provided to you in respect of crime and disorder. And so it's one in which you would not be surprised to hear that a premises coming to you seeking additional hours might find themselves on the authority's radar, specifically in terms of the way that it trades or incidents that have happened at it specifically, for less than desirable reasons. That is not the case here today, and therefore clearly my client is able to operate in this context, in the context that Claire's provided to you this morning, without providing anything substantive for the authorities to say in terms of the negative impact that it has now or problems that it causes now. In terms of the representations, as I say, I just will touch briefly on the environmental health representation. Briefly because, as you'll be aware, councillors, it's been withdrawn and therefore it's no longer an active matter for you to consider, but obviously it would be important for you councillors in terms of context. The representation refers to noise complaints received by the environmental health team, and we know the following about those complaints from our discussions with the officer. We know that there was one complaint in August 2024, in respect of which the environmental health team wrote an informative letter to the site. There was a further complaint about one date in July 2025, so almost a year elapsing between those two incidents, in respect of which, again, the environmental health team wrote to the site to inform them that this had occurred. We know from our discussions that the environmental health team sent out noise diaries to those complainants and have never received anything back since the initial complaint. They have not, the environmental health team, carried out their own investigations as a result of that lack of engagement back from the complainants following on from the initial complaint. And therefore, these complaints are entirely unsubstantiated at the time of us speaking. Furthermore, my client, for their own part, is convinced that these noise issues do not relate to their own premises, because they carry out their own regular noise monitoring, as is actually mandated by the existing premises licence at the site. They carry out noise monitoring. They've never witnessed any issues that they've needed to address in terms of noise breakout from the premises, although they have heard noise breakout from other premises in the vicinity. Additionally, and just anecdotally, the most recent complaint refers to noise from karaoke, which is not something that occurs at my client's premises on any occasion. So as I say, my client's reasonably convinced that these complaints do not actually relate to sound having come from their premises. In any case, my client has offered conditions to the environmental health team that has satisfied them that either such issues will not be repeated, if indeed they can be attributed to the premises at any time in the future, or that if they are, there are mechanisms in place to address them. Councillors, I don't know if you've seen the conditions that have been agreed with environmental health, or whether you want me to just detail those for you. You're nodding, so you've seen them. Yes, lovely. Okie dokes. We would ask the committee in respect of those conditions to bear in mind that those conditions would apply throughout hours, not just to the additional hours that we've requested in respect of this application. And therefore, arguably, those conditions present an improved position as compared to the existing licence, with the quid pro quo in respect of that improvement being these 2 additional hours a week that we request through this application. We're pleased that the environmental health team have withdrawn their representation in response to these conditions, and we would submit that this demonstrates that the grant of this application could not and would not have a negative impact on the public nuisance licensing objective. Again, we would suggest that this demonstrates that this application is exceptional. My client has engaged with the responsible authority here in such a way as to address any concerns that they had, demonstrated that they are a conscientious operator who wants to address any potential issues. And importantly, we would say as well, councillors, that there are no representations from any residents themselves, no councillors, no residents associations, no other parties have engaged with this application. And hopefully, again, this in itself provides the committee with some reassurance, given that a significant group of people who this policy was undoubtedly designed to protect, i.e. the residents of this city, do not think that an additional hour at Revolution 2 days a week will negatively impact upon them. Now, again, we would submit that that's exceptional, that indicates a premises with an excellent trading record. And as I say, we would submit that trading record in itself is exceptional in the area in which Revolution is trading. As the licensing authority representation highlights, as Claire's submissions will have highlighted to you this morning, Revolution sits in a very tricky area. It sits in what's described by the licensing authority's representation as one of the worst of the 23 wards for certain criminal offences and second worst for others. And within that challenging context, Revolution, we would say, consistently outperforms. In preparation for this hearing, I asked Mike to pull from his internal reporting system, which is an extremely comprehensive electronic reporting system, which no doubt Mike can explain to you in more detail should you have any queries. I asked him to pull any and all incidents, any mention of the police on that internal reporting system in the last year. Mike actually did that all the way back to the start of last year, so since the start of 2024, so a period of 21 months. In that time, the word police in an incident report appeared a total of 39 times in my client's recording, so averaging 1.86 times per month. This reduces down to 1.52 per month if we remove reports relating to routine visits, visits unrelated to the venue, so perhaps seeking CCTV for something that happened outside or something along those lines, and any reports relating to accidents. It's further reduced down to 1.19 reports if unsubstantiated or disproven allegations are also removed, so something which was reported and then was shown not to have happened, for example. Now, in terms of Operation Marble offences, so those being violent crime or sexual offences, total reports at Revolution over the 21-month period is 7, so an average of 0.3 per month. We know that the police think that the venue is well run. We know that they're happy with the incident reporting. We know that the incident reporting system is comprehensive. As you've heard from Claire, and as you'll be aware, councillors, Operation Marble is the enhanced policing operation provided in the city centre at weekends due to those higher incidents of violent crime. And it is the Operation Marble data that supports the continuation of the special policy, as detailed in Appendix E to your policy. And therefore, logically, these are going to be the sorts of offences that we're most concerned about in the context of cumulative impact. So as I say, an average here of 0.3 reports, even not necessarily incidents, but reports a month, a total of 7 over 21 months is, we would say, exceptional in an area that is clearly much more problematic than this generally and across the board. This demonstrates that the premises trades well now, but we appreciate that obviously the policy indicates that simply a good trading record in and of itself will not be considered to be exceptional. However, again, I would emphasise that this is a good trading record in a very challenging area. Secondly, though, what we would say is truly exceptional is that this premises has demonstrated with evidence that not only do they have a good trading record, but also that they can trade to the additional hours requested in this application without any additional impact being caused. And they've done this through the use of temporary events notices. I would refer you, councillors, to paragraph 22 of our statement of evidence, which details the temporary event notices applied for and operated at the premises. So the site have operated temporary events notices to allow the additional hour on 25 occasions between October last year and April this year. None of these dates have resulted in any issues being caused at the premises. No police call-outs have been required during that additional hour. No incidents have been reported or recorded on my client's internal system during those additional hours. Additionally, we have looked at the available crime map and crime data via police.uk in respect of the months in which the TENS took place at the premises. At page 5 of our evidence bundle, you'll see that we reviewed the number of crimes committed in each month in the area around Revolution, West Street, with various figures available depending on how closely or widely you focus on Revolution itself. We would obviously, councillors, have liked, if we could, to have looked at the specific crime data for the actual day in which each of these temporary event notices took place, but the available data that we have on the police.uk website, the most detail it gets is monthly, so there's nothing we could do to look at the weeks or the days, I'm afraid. But looking at the data, you will see that we've been able to find crime figures for the months leading up to October last year when my client's TENS began, and then the months in which the TENS were operated. And what you'll see, councillors, is there is absolutely no correlation between the number of TENS operated at Revolution and the number of crimes committed in the area. Indeed, for example, in December 2024, when the premises had its highest number of TENS, the number of crimes is actually at its lowest in the area around Revolution, and its third lowest in the widest aspect that we were able to see. The average number of crimes in the two closest aspects is actually less during the months that Revolution operate their TENS than during the months that they were not. Now, we of course accept that there are going to be multiple other factors at play here. We don't have access to more detailed data than what's available to us on the police.uk website. There are going to be other things going on that are contributing here. What else is going on in the city? What policing responses are in place, and so on and so forth. So, you know, we're doing the best that we can with the available data, but what we can see is that there just isn't any correlation. We're not seeing a spike when Revolution are trading their TENS. We appreciate obviously what Claire has mentioned in terms of the fact that the TENS operated during a time when prison was closed. I think the figure that Claire gave was a 2,000 capacity premises. Now, obviously, that's going to remove a premises from the area, but equally, I would submit you would expect that to put more pressure on the premises that are trading in the area, with that demand of customers still wanting to come into the area and having less places to go. And again, no incidents whatsoever reported during the times that my client had the temporary events notices, no police call-outs, no incidents. So what we can say then is that there is no demonstrable negative impact on numbers of crimes, numbers of incidents during the time that my client has operated these TENS, either in the premises itself or from what we can see of the data in the wider area. So we would say it is therefore demonstrable that these additional hours would not add to the cumulative impact experienced in the area. Hopefully, councillors, that should help to address the substantive concern that the police raise in their representation. So they raise wider and, as I say, more general concerns about policy, about what the policy says, about problems in the area in general. But their substantive concern is specifically that these additional hours could add to cumulative impact. Hopefully, the fact that my client has demonstrated on some 25 occasions that they do not will provide you with comfort in that regard. Furthermore, the other substantive concern raised by the police in respect of cumulative impact is that it may be added to because, and if I quote from the representation, the additional hours could encourage persons to remain in the area at the heart of the nighttime economy in Brighton. So these additional hours will encourage more people to stay within this area for longer hours. Now, it is our contention that this application is also exceptional because we can demonstrate that the grant of it would not, in fact, have that effect. It would not encourage people to remain in the area any more than they already do, and therefore demonstrably would not have the effect of adding to cumulative impact. So why do we think that? Why do we think that this application would not encourage people to remain in the area? The answer to that is simply because we think the majority of people in Revolution at the current closing time at present remain in the area anyway. We think they simply migrate to other premises. Now, this was an anecdotal assertion made to me by Nick, the DPS here, when we discussed the reasons for submitting this application from my client's point of view. Nick, being aware that this or being under the impression that this is what his customers do, we would submit as strong evidence in itself. Nick's a really experienced GM. He knows about the habits of his customers and the way that the nighttime economy in this area works and operates just about as well as anybody else in this room. However, we also wanted to provide you with some additional independent evidence of what Nick is saying here. And in that regard, councillors, I would refer you to the report of Jeff Fevier, which you can find on page 7 of our bundle, our bundle of evidence served. What Jeff observed bears out what Nick says. You'll see Jeff's credentials within his report, within his witness statement. And as I say, what he observed bears out what Nick is telling me, what Nick is telling you. Less than 0.5% of the customers that Jeff observed leaving Revolution during his visit exited Revolution and exited the nighttime economy area directly. Other customers were instead observed going directly to other later opening premises or were observed to stay within the nighttime economy area in general. So given that that's established, what then would be the impact of Revolution trading for an additional hour? Well, we would submit it would not be to encourage more people to remain in the area, but rather it would be to encourage people who would be in the area anyway to remain in Revolution. And there are an important number of conclusions that follow on from this. If there is no encouragement for more people to come to or more people to stay in the area, it's difficult to see how negative cumulative impact could be added to by the grant of this application. Furthermore, if people are being retained in what is demonstrably a safe, well-run, trouble-free premises for longer, rather than migrating around the nighttime economy area as they do now, where issues could be caused on the street, issues could be caused gaining access to other premises, we would submit that this might actually have a positive impact. Indeed, the additional hour might well mean that a greater proportion of Revolution's customers decide to call an end to their night when Revolution closes and exit the nighttime economy directly from there, being monitored into taxis by the Revolution team. The additional hour in Revolution we would submit would therefore have the impact of reducing the migration around the nighttime economy. And furthermore, given that we can see that the numbers generally in the nighttime economy in this area are unlikely to be increased by the grant of this application, but rather are likely to maintain fairly constantly, we would submit that it would also be positive to increase the cumulative presence of door staff within that area. Jeff Fevier's report comments on the behaviour of door staff at Revolution, again under the instructions of my client. He comments that they're a professional team. They're, of course, under the instructions of an experienced DPS employed by a company with an excellent reputation, years of experience. We would submit that an additional hour's presence of those door staff on the street, monitoring customers, overseeing behaviour, can only be a positive thing. Essentially, if this application is granted within the nighttime economy area, we would say that there will be more door staff present for longer, overseeing the same or a very similar number of overall customers. We would submit that the effects and the conclusions that I've described explain why the additional hours under the temporary events notices have not caused any issues at the times and dates when they've been utilised. So again, therefore, we would demonstrate that the grant of this application would not add to negative cumulative impact. We also know that there's a concern that the additional hours, and this was again raised in Claire's oral submissions this morning, would mean a less staggered dispersal from this area generally. And this would therefore lead to more people being on the street at the same time. This was a particular concern mentioned in the pre-application discussions that we undertook with the police, that it would bring Revolution's closing time in line with PRISM and cause more people to be dispersing onto the street at the same time. We don't think that that will be the case, again, for the reasons discussed in respect of Jeff Fevia's report. But also, and in any case, this timing does not bring Revolution directly into line with multiple other premises within the area. It doesn't suddenly remove that staggered effect. And we would say that's demonstrated by the figure at paragraph 25 of our evidence bundle. Revolution currently has, within the context of those various late opening premises, a relatively early alcohol cessation time because it has that 2:30 time as compared to a lot of others which sit on the hour. And so within the vicinity in terms of the later opening premises, it sits reasonably early on the weekends. The new hours would put it somewhere in the middle. It would actually be entirely unique in having an alcohol cessation time at 3:30. It would have the same last entry time in terms of prison, but that would therefore mean that customers will not be migrating between the two. It has a 30 minutes earlier closing time in respect of its premises licence, although we appreciate what Claire's saying in terms of the practical closing time that PRISM operates at the moment. But as I say, what it doesn't do is bring Revolution in line with multiple other premises in the area, all closing and all kicking out at exactly the same time. And of course, it does mean that door staff are monitoring on the street at the same time that dispersal to ensure that that's done in an orderly fashion. We would suggest, therefore, that the table submitted shows that within the area generally, that staggered effect of dispersal is maintained, and therefore we would suggest that no negative impact is likely to be caused in terms of disrupting that graduality of dispersal. Finally, councillors, we would say that even if you are not convinced by these arguments, even if you think that the status quo at this premises plus an additional hour must surely add to cumulative impact somehow, I would highlight that we are not asking for the status quo plus an additional hour. And that is because my client was cognizant that this application would be subject to the cumulative impact policy and wanted to do what it could to offset those concerns. So as such, and as you've heard, as you'll be aware, councillors, part of this application seeks to remove the existing conditions attached to the licence and replace them with an updated and more comprehensive operating schedule. This includes the continuation of conditions already attached to the current premises licence, which provide important protections in themselves. So, for example, requiring the employment of door staff at minimum amounts and minimum ratios, requiring that comprehensive CCTV system, requiring risk assessment in terms of glassware, monitoring and regular noise monitoring checks, written dispersal policy, requiring membership of the Brighton Business Crime Reduction Partnership, use of the CityLink radio, all of those things that we would expect to see. The operating schedule also retains the requirement for a last entry time, and that is 1 hour before closing. So that means that there will be no admission to or readmission to the premises after 3 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday if you're minded to grant this application. This condition has significant impact, we would submit, because it further emphasises that this application is not seeking to and will not have the effect of attracting new customers to the premises or to the area. It will simply have the effect of retaining those who are already there. 3 o'clock, councillors, is the time that Revolution currently closes on a Friday and Saturday. So with this last entry condition kicking in at 3 o'clock, no new customers will be able to enter Revolution any later than the hour it currently trades until. So again, therefore, we're trying to emphasise here, it's about retention rather than attraction. This last entry time also has the effect of making dispersal from my client's premises specifically gradual, as it occurs over an hour's period rather than the customary half an hour. And what that means is that dispersal is more gradual, more natural, and doesn't mean that larger numbers are being dispersed at an earlier time. Now, obviously, that earlier time, when we're talking about the statistics that Claire has referenced, and as per the questions you were asking, councillors, that peak time is actually 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. My clients looking therefore to be dispersing customers between 3 and 4 o'clock, so later and much more gradually. Finally, in respect of the operating schedule, the new operating schedule proposed, it includes additional comprehensive and more onerous conditions that are not currently attached to the licence. And it's our submission that these would act to offset, in terms of their positive impact, any hypothetical negative impact from the additional hours sought. So these new conditions or improved conditions include improved training conditions, improved CCTV conditions, so requiring more of the CCTV system than the licence currently does, a requirement to equip door staff with two-way radios, a requirement to equip door staff with body cameras, which can have a significant deterrent effect, a requirement for a documented search policy, a requirement for action counter-terrorism training, and really importantly, we would say a requirement for an ID scanning system to be operated at the premises from 9 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday, so the nights that would be affected by the grant of this application. We would submit that this is a very significant condition, as use of these systems is often encouraged by the police and often resisted actually by premises. It is an onerous condition, but it works. These have a significant deterrent effect. They ensure that the right types of customers are in attendance at the premises. This is not a requirement of the licence at present, but it is offered as a new condition to be added to the licence if you are minded to grant these additional hours. There is also the very significant condition in respect of the installation and setting of a noise limiter, which resulted in the withdrawal of the environmental health team representation. And again, we would submit that such significant additional conditions are sufficient to offset any potential hypothetical negative impact, and that the offer of such conditions again contributes to making this application exceptional. The police and the licensing authority do not suggest any further conditions that would be prudent to offer. Indeed, the police do say that these conditions can have the impact of reducing the occurrence of incidents and the way they're managed in the premises itself. We would submit that this is because the operating schedule is extremely comprehensive and because it covers all matters listed as licensing best practice in Appendix A of your policy. We would submit that these conditions, together with the circumstances of the application as I've described, will ensure that the grant of this application will not add to cumulative impact in the area. So to finalise, I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear, and to summarise, I will just quickly recap what those circumstances are, what we've discussed as follows. This is a limited, and therefore we would submit actually a reasonably uncontroversial application which seeks just 2 additional hours a week plus an additional hour on bank holidays. This application has not been vociferously objected to by the police or the licensing authority in respect of crime and disorder. The environmental health team have withdrawn their representation as a result of conditions offered by my client. This application is made by a premises with an excellent trading record, with minimal recorded incidents and no specific concerns raised by any responsible authority. It holds this trading record even in the challenging context and location in which it trades. It is shown through the operation of multiple temporary event notices that the trading record does not change and is not negatively impacted by an additional hour. So it's provided you with evidence to show that the grant of this application would not add to negative cumulative impact. It has instructed an independent expert to look at customer behaviour to confirm independently what the site is confident is true, that the grant of this application would not attract new people to the cumulative impact zone, nor encourage people to stay within it. It also would not affect staggered dispersal from the nighttime economy in general. Rather, it would retain people within Revolution, allow them to disperse gradually from that premises and reduce migration. It would retain them within a premises which is well run and well staffed by a very professional door security team, which our independent consultant says is an impressive premises which attracts a more mature crowd. And should you grant this application, it will retain those customers in a premises with a licence that is subject to an updated and comprehensive new set of conditions, including a last entry time to ensure gradual dispersal, including conditions already attached to the licence and including a requirement for an ID scan system to be used. We would submit that those factors taken together make this application exceptional, rebut the presumption against grant, and mean that you can be confident that should you decide to grant, the licensing objectives will be upheld and there will be no negative cumulative impact. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed with your ability to to speak for such a long time. That's very impressive. Yeah, have a quick slurp of water before you carry on. I've got. I was about to encourage questions, and I see that my colleague Sam has put her hand up first. So fire away, Sam.
Hi, I've got a number of questions. Thank you for that. It was very comprehensive and impressive. Can you just explain a little bit more about the ID scanning? Because you said that that would only be in operation Friday to Saturday. So I'm just curious about that. Is it something you have to buy in separately, or you have to buy a license for, or is it something that you buy and use? I just was curious about why only Friday and Saturday it would be used.
So it's a machine that you have to buy in to use. The ID physically goes into the scanning system.
Yeah.
So it's something that my clients, exactly. So it's a physical machine that my clients will have. The reason we've suggested it only on a Friday and Saturday is because obviously those are the days that this application applies to. These are the days that we're seeking to do something different.
Sure.
Obviously we'd be happy to also operate it on a bank holiday, because we have applied for extended hours on a day before a bank holiday as well. The reason that we want to do
it was a TENS.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I know some of the TENS were because of prison being closed, but if you applied for those, that was my question was, is it something that you have a number of hours to operate?
Oh, I understand. No, not at all. No, once you've got the machine, you can use it at your will. Yes.
Okay. All right. So if for example, you applied for a TENS for, I don't know, a special celebration or, a special day in the calendar, then actually we could put a condition on that to say the ID scanner must be, if it's in place, then we could put a condition on that to say that would have to be used on additional occasions.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's not a case of sort of you've only got a restricted amount of time that you can use it. And by offering the condition on a Friday and Saturday, we're not necessarily saying that that's absolutely the only time that my clients would use it. They risk assess what they do on a regular basis. So if there was a Thursday when there was a particularly, something going on in the city that made it prudent to use it, my clients would do that off their own back as well.
Okay, that was my question. So I just wanted to check about, obviously dispersal is the key issue here. It feels like that, dispersal is around the key issue. How do you see the bell curve in terms of dispersal? I'm an old lady, and honestly, if I came to Revolution, I'd probably be leaving about 12:30, absolutely done. So I'm just wondering about, whilst I'm probably not your target audience, about the bell curve in terms of people coming in and then dispersing, because you're looking, obviously extending, and you're saying that you want people to be allowed to come in up to 3 o'clock, which it seems reasonable. But I'm just curious about that kind of, you don't have to give me
sort of when we're busiest.
What's the bell curve? Yeah, when do you see the big queues? Is it 12 o'clock? Is it 1 o'clock? Is it 2 o'clock? When are the big queues in, and when are the kind of people trying to come out? What does that curve look like over the course of an average Saturday night, for example?
Michael, Nick, can you help with that?
Yeah, Nick can add more context, but it's what we believe at the moment, and what Nick's saying is you've got a demographic of international students, and they haven't quite yet come back after the break. But international students tend to go a little bit later, so we will have peaks and troughs throughout the night. But Nick, if you want to explain a bit about that, but they tend to come around midnight till 1. The international students, because they'll go out later, they'll maybe go for something to eat, etc.
Yeah, they do differ to your local customers, definitely, and we do have a lot of internationals that do come between, like I say, Mike says, between 12 and 2, and they do stay later, but with the additional hour, it's allowing people to drift away rather than closing and sort of all of them piling out at once. That's the idea behind this, with especially with my Friday night customers, and Saturday we see the same thing, rather than them going off at 2 o'clock down to other places. They'll be able to finish their night, and it'll be safer for them that we're able to rush them into taxis. It's closer to the first train back home as well. Plus, they're not walking around the town. They're with us.
Okay. And you monitor people going in and out of taxis as they're leaving, or going into taxis, not, you know, as they're leaving the premises where they want taxis.
Taxi rank is directly opposite, so we've got a really good eye on it. We watch people across the road. We make sure that they're not going to get run over or anything else. Usually, generally stand in the middle of the road. There's an island in the middle of the road, and we're quite observant. If anything happens, we do sort of go over and intervene. But like I say, touch wood, very little happens. Right. We've seen. So.
And my final question is, I mean, the new operating schedule sounds amazing. If we refuse the extension of the licence, will you still be putting the new operating schedule into place? Because obviously, as a city council, this is something that I would imagine we would be very keen on. But I was just wondering about whether these are plans that will go ahead regardless, or are they conditional on us granting the extension?
So they're part of the same application. So we're seeking them as a quid pro quo to the additional hours. I mean, obviously, from my client's point of view, these are things that are going to cost the business more. So, obviously what you're concerned about is the licensing objectives. We can completely appreciate that. But of course, my client is a business. So they, what they would be seeking is those additional hours so that they've got that additional funds to invest in the additional conditions. Now, don't get me wrong, some of the conditions with regards to things like the, improved training, et cetera, are all things that my client would be doing across the board anyway. So some of it would happen anyway. But, in terms of the more onerous things like the noise limiter and so on and so forth, we're looking for that as a quid pro quo for the hours that we're seeking.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sam. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Rebecca. You'll be pleased to know that you've taken loads of my questions away, because you explained it in your presentation, which was great. I'm interested. I was going to ask about the sound limiter, which I'm really interested in, because I really need to get an understanding of what type of entertainment happens over the weekend, and I'm also interested in the courtyard as well. I appreciate what you said, that it's a low residential area, but Julie and Sam and I have all got colleagues that represent those two wards as well, so we're well aware of the impacts of what happens afterwards. Is there, the CCTV news is great. Does the CCTV cover the courtyard? And what sort of capacity do you get in? Is the courtyard a smoking area, for example, or is it, what sort of number of people are there? How many staff the venue actually employs over the weekend? Because obviously the dispersal isn't just of customers, it's about dispersal of staff as well that are going home through this. And what's the capacity? It'd be helpful if I could understand some of those. And I've got another question about TENS, but I'll come back in a second with that.
Yeah, no problem. Let me deal with the ones that I can deal with, and then I'll hand you over to Mike or Nick for the rest. So in terms of the courtyard, there are existing conditions governing its capacity. So its maximum capacity is 170 customers. So that's an existing condition on the licence, which has been carried over into the new operating schedule that we've discussed. It's got conditions restricting live or amplified music in the rear courtyard. Those are obviously subject to the relaxations afforded by the Live Music Act, but there are, my client adheres to the conditions subject to those relaxations. And as I say, the existing capacity is to be maintained in terms of the courtyard. Mike or Nick, can you help with number of staff employed and total capacity? Because I don't think that's governed by the existing licence.
Mike, you want me to go? So staff members on a Saturday, I'll run on a night time around 20 bar staff and up to 14 doormen. Depending on what the event, so sort of between 10 and 14 doormen. Getting staff home, we make sure that people car share, people get lifts home, doormen go home together, staff will get buses, taxis together. So we're quite hot on staff welfare and making sure these people are looked after. Some of our managers will drop them home in their car, or they'll get taxis from outside. We'll wait. We'd never leave anybody on their own, if you know what I mean, just to get home. So it's, staff welfare is a big part of what we do. Capacity 720 of the whole venue, 170 in the courtyard. it very rarely gets anywhere near that. Yes, it is a smoking area, but it's also a quiet area where people can go and chat and things like that at night. So it's popular. But yeah, I've never really seen it get anywhere near the 170 mark. It's frequently used. People are in and out a lot. So that's hope that answers your question.
Thank you. If I could just come back, Julie, I was interested in the 10s when Prism was closed. I didn't know about that, and that's really interesting. I suppose anecdotally, I'm looking, did you see an increase in trade? I appreciate that there were no reported issues inside the club, which is great, but, was it good for the business? Did it have an effect on you?
So what it did was give people an extended part. It gave them another option rather than coming at 12 and going, well, we're going to have to go off somewhere else because you close. We just saw people stay a little bit later, come a little bit later, stay a little bit later. So we had a good, we have 3 or 4 different types of customers. We have our daytime customers, we have our early evening customers, then sort of your mid 9 till 12 customers, and then your late sort of 12 till 2 customers. They started to come a little bit later because they knew they were able to stay longer, because what they would usually do is come a bit earlier, then they'd be leaving to go down the seafront sort of by 2 o'clock. What we found is that they just stayed a little bit longer and drifted away rather than running off at 2 o'clock. And we lose a majority of our customers at 2 a.m. To other places because of last entries, because of wanting to get and have and continue their night for a reasonable amount of time somewhere else. You don't want to go somewhere else just for an hour or half an hour. So yes, trade was good during that period, but I don't think it increased the amount of people we had. It just gave the people that we had a better option. So
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I just wanted to ask a question. Because Steve brought up the thing about going outside to smoke, which we know we have to do. What is your policy on taking drinks out with you? Because that's an issue which is a bit of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you don't want people to hang around with their drinks outside and be outside for too long. Or the other thing is spiking. So I just wanted I know it's not really connected to this, but I'd just like to hear your policy on that.
Yeah, I'll hand over to Nick in terms of whether drinks are taken into the courtyard. But as I understand it, Nick, and do correct me if I'm wrong, you're obviously using the courtyard as your smoking area. So what we haven't got is people out the front on the street smoking, correct? Yeah. Do you want to just confirm, Nick, people can take their drinks out into the courtyard to smoke, presumably? Yeah,
so the courtyard area is a really nice space. It's got heaters out there, umbrellas. So if it is weather's not particularly good, they're deployed. A lot of seating outside. People go outside to sit and chat. Take their drinks with them. Yeah, absolutely. We don't make people leave their drinks inside, so they can move in and out freely with their drinks. And yeah, it's just a nice area. Rather than it's not a caged courtyard. It's a very nice space.
Thank you. That's that's obviously of concern when we're moving in our new statement of licensing policy. We're moving towards doing a lot more emphasis on safety, particularly of vulnerable young people, be they male or female or in between. So thanks for that. Right.
And just to add, Councillor Casale, if I might, that's something that is picked up on throughout Revolution. The internal training system has training on violence against women and girls. It's something that you guys pick up at an internal level, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, we've also to add, we operate as I think as Nick's alluding to, the outside space is almost operating the same way as the internal space. So we've got obviously CCTV, we've got door supervision. We have an operation called Floor Watch, which is a system of paperwork and in due diligence, but it's every 15 minutes. So the door staff will patrol and record an area every 30 minutes, but that's also offset by the management. So between every 15 minutes at least, there is a written record of checks and due diligence and safety and vulnerability and aftercare, and then the steps we've taken. I think Rebecca alluded to it before, but we have an internal database for across 66 premises where we have approximately 2,000 logs a week. Now, obviously, I'm talking to a committee, and 2,000 logs a week could seem scary, but it's not all incidents. It's lots of examples of refusals for alcohol, dress. Also, it's got examples of due diligence. So we review all that and learn from it all the time, and just reflect that back into our operation.
Fantastic. That's good to hear. And Sam is our lead in the administration for violence against women and girls. So I think the more we hear about good measures that are being taken in the licensed premises, the better. So thank you very much for that, and I'm glad I asked. Now, does anybody want to take a 5-minute break for anything, or do we want to? Oh, hang on, Claire, what would you like to say?
Sorry, I've just got a question for.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry, gosh, and I've got Corinne. Sorry, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, Claire.
These are questions probably for Nick, because he is there. So just looking at the TENS that have been used, obviously we've discussed how prison was closed at the time, and also just noting that it's obviously a seasonally quieter time between November and April. How do you feel in your experience that this makes a difference? Like, now you've done the summer as well. Obviously you didn't have the TENS for that, but did you feel made a difference seasonally?
It made a difference to trade. Yeah, it made the venue more attractive. We're popular anyway, but it's another, like I said earlier, it's another option for people rather than going to the seafront and having to walk all the way down to Horizon or Players or wherever. So yes, it did make a difference.
Thank you. And since prison reopened, have you seen much of a change in numbers, or have they remained constant? Have people been more inclined to stay with you guys? How has that kind of impacted you as a venue, or have you not seen a noticeable difference?
Prison reopening, initially we took maybe a 10 or 15% decline on where I thought we should have been. Recently, in the last couple of months, sort of after the sort of 6-week honeymoon period, after that, we've retained our numbers from last year. But again, like, I see people leaving at 2 a.m. to go to prison or go to the seafront because it's that option. So from a safety point of view, if they stayed with us, it would be better for them. So better for us and the town.
Well, thank you so much. That's all I've got to ask.
Thanks very much, Corinne.
Hi, thank you. As part of the application of the extension, it also includes off sales of alcohol. I just wondered how important that is to the business, the off sales increasing as well, whether you need to
I would just jump in and say that I would have just done that as a matter of course, because it's what we already have to extend the hours. We already have off sales, so that's just, from my point of view, I would have automatically ticked it. So I'll let either Mike or Nick answer as to whether off sales is something that they need for that additional hour.
No, it's absolutely not. It's on rare occasions. So we're as part of our operation, Revolution Flavour was our USP. So occasionally, if there was a function or a birthday, we might have given, like that masterclass, a bottle of gift wrapped flavour and things like that. But it's absolutely not essential to what we're talking about today.
Oh, glad to hear that, because I actually thank you. Because I did pick that up when I was reading through the papers yesterday, because I'm just thinking about, you're not an off license. It's just, as you say, allowing people to take a bottle away if they've won it in a competition or a
but
like
we wouldn't let that happen at peak times, and the door supervisors wouldn't let anyway. It'd be the same as a glass receptacle leaving the venue at peak times. We wouldn't allow it.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Claire. Would you like to come back?
Yeah, just to say that Sussex Police would welcome that removal of the off sales for the additional hour.
Okay, how would we deal with that? Would that make a big difference to you if that was a condition?
From our point of view, absolutely not. I think that is the way you would deal with it. It would be a condition that would say no off sales beyond X time on X days. And as I say, wouldn't be a problem from our point of view.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Just to do another quick round. Any more questions? Nope. Okay. No, thank you. Now I'm just thinking about, do we need a 5-minute break, or can I jump onto summaries?
If we could have 5 minutes, that would be great, please.
Thank you. Okay then. Yeah. Okay, that's great. So back in what's the time? 11:16. 11:21, I suppose, if you're going to go strictly to 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay then. Okay, cheerio. Sarah or Corinne, which one of you will be
It's
doing
me.
a summary? Okay, Sarah, would you like to give us your summary? Thank you.
I will indeed. So thank you. You have heard from all the parties present for this variation application and any additional conditions that have been canvassed, particularly regarding off sales. Licensing guidance states that in determining the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives in the overall interests of the local community, the licensing authority must give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, the representations, including supporting information presented by all the parties, the licensing guidance and its own statement of licensing policy. It is important to note that each application will be given individual consideration on its own merits. And the question for the panel is whether they consider that the application is likely to add to the existing cumulative impact or has the applicant demonstrated that their application will not add. The licensing authority will always consider the circumstances of each case and whether there are exceptional circumstances to justify departing from its special policy in the light of the individual circumstances of the case. After considering all the relevant issues, the licensing authority may grant the application, and if the panel decide to grant the application, then any conditions added to the licence to meet the licensing objectives should be clear, precise, enforceable, justifiable and capable of being met. Alternatively, the licensing authority may refuse the application on the grounds that it is appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and against our statement of licensing policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I'll now move on to Claire for her summary, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it brief, just an outline. So you've heard our submissions around crime and disorder and the risk that West Street and the surrounding area faces. We've raised that the TENS used were at a time when another large premises prison was closed and that they were also during winter, so that's typically a quieter time in the nighttime economy. We've heard proposals from the applicant around how they believe they'll be able to manage the additional risk. And so we ask that the committee makes a decision based on policy, police concern, including high crime and disorder statistics, cumulative impact, as well as your own local knowledge. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. Corinne.
Thank you, Chair. My representation was made as the licensing team have concerns that the application could have a negative impact on the licensing objectives of the prevention of crime and disorder and the prevention of public nuisance. I also referred to the special policy on cumulative impact, which is contained within our council's statement of licensing policy. The representation requested that the variation application be considered by the panel to decide whether you feel from the application and what you've heard today that it constitutes exceptional circumstances to depart from the statement of licensing policy. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. And finally, Rebecca.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I'm really not going to take too much of your time now. I do assure you. Just to summarise what we've already heard this morning, as you know, councillors, your policy is not absolute. As Sarah has just reminded you, you can grant this application if you are happy that you feel that the grant of it would not be likely to add to cumulative impact. We would say that what you've heard this morning in terms of evidence that it might is general. It's about the area itself rather than anything specifically about this premises or this application. We would say that we've provided you with ample, tangible evidence that it will not add to cumulative impact, and that evidence is specific and demonstrable. We hope that the trading record that we've outlined to you in respect of the premises, the temporary events notices, which took place on 25 occasions, and I would say that we would, I'm sure, have liked to have carried out more than those if, of course, the statutory limits had allowed. The data that we've provided, the independent report that we've provided, the background information you've had about the premises and the operator, both in advance of this hearing and during the questions, and indeed the discussion we've had about the conditions that we've offered in detail to you. I very much hope that those will address any concerns that you may have had at the outset of this morning and on reviewing the application. We would reiterate that all of those factors combined, first of all, make the application exceptional, and secondly, ensure that cumulative impact will not be added to. And I would just reiterate on my client's behalf their absolute commitment to continuing to contribute positively to the nighttime economy in Brighton, and their absolute commitment to upholding the licensing objectives. Thank you so much for your time and for your patience this morning, councillors.
Thank you very much. Actually, we didn't require as much patience today because it's all very nice and neatly done in an hour and a half. Now, I'll just go over to Rebecca, the other Rebecca, two solicitors called Rebecca. What's the chances? And she will just give us some final points, and then we'll go into closed sessions for our deliberations.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't think I've got anything to add unless you've just, have you asked all the questions you wish to and canvassed all the measures, which I think you probably have. So unless you've got anything to ask of me, I think it's all mainly been stated.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So thank you for your time, everybody. And we will go into our deliberation now in the other virtual room, and you will receive a response in 5 working days. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.